Geoff here from Seriously Series, and welcome to a new episode in our Golden Quest series. Today what we're going to be tackling is one of the most iconic tracks here in Western Australia, and this is none other than the Holland Track. This track proved to be of great use to prospectors and those that were wanting to seek their fortune in the goldfields of Western Australia. We're going to be using the mighty Series 2 here to explore this remote and unique part of the world. So stay tuned for another interesting adventure as always. This adventure we would be completing the northern section of the Holland Track, from east of Hyden in the wheat belt up to Coolgardie in the goldfields. The Holland Track played a vital role in helping Western Australia grow as a colony. As the pioneers headed east with the goal of establishing pasture for cattle, gold was found, first at Southern Cross and then at Coolgardie. News got out and many wishful, hopeful individuals migrated to Western Australia through the port town of Albany. Though there was one problem. There wasn't any well-established tracks, at least, from Broomhill to Coolgardie, so how were they going to get to the goldfields? Well, in 1893, a man by the name of John Holland had a way and a plan of doing so. Having spent several years working in the surrounding bushland, he knew the landscape well, and within 2 months, him and his party had forged a trail through the wilderness from Broomhill to the goldfields. Though sadly, within only a few years, the Holland Track would be forgotten, as the railroads were extended from Southern Cross to Coolgardie, and gold claims were found further east in Kalgoorlie, leaving the track to lapse back into the wilderness it had been forged out of. It's been an interesting day today, and I'm just sitting on the top of Mount Holland with the Series 2, just looking at the sunset. The track's been pretty interesting, and the conditions obviously, as you've seen, can obviously make your adventure pretty interesting too. But here at Mount Holland, it's actually really quite interesting. It's reasonably elevated compared to the surrounding countryside, or bushland you could say. But it's not what you would call a mountain. It's not thousands of feet high or thousands of metres high above sea level. But in comparison to the rest of the landmass, it really does stick out. I would have been at least 15 or 20 kilometres down the track and I could actually see the silhouette of it. It's landmarks like this even today, but particularly back in the 1890s when people were travelling up the Holland Track to get to Coolgardie, to obviously stake their claim or make their fame, landmarks like this were absolutely paramount, because it meant that you were going in the right direction. Because the rest of the landmass, you pretty much can't see anything at all. It's pretty much just trees, grass and trees, and that's it. So it's very easy to get lost out here. So you can really appreciate the significance of something like this here, and obviously that's why even out in this part of the world it might seem like a hill, but it's given the prestigious name of mountain. Anyway, getting a bit late, we better find a camp and get some tucker on. So anyway, the track's starting to open up a little bit, and I noticed there's a few odd pegs on the side of the track. And obviously we're starting to get into some really nice bushland here. Lots of what I call blue gums or ghost gums, and really nice shade and just really nice country. Still flat as a tack, mind you, but one thing that we haven't got is very many granite outcrops. And I wonder why that is the case. Well, there's something on the side of the track here that I thought you might find of interest, so we'll have a look at that and I'll be able to tell you why. So this is what I was telling you about. This is known as a air core hole, and that doesn't really tell us much. That's just the method of drilling, but it's a drill hole nevertheless. And basically this can tell us a lot, and it explains why we're not seeing as many granite outcrops up in this part of the world compared to the start of the track. The reason being is the weathering profile is much deeper. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. If you go out into your garden or your backyard and you start digging a hole, you dig down, 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 and let's say you dig a couple of meters and you hit hard rock. Well, what do we call that? We call that bedrock. So we've got bedrock, and then everything from there up to where the grass grows is known as cover, or weathering profile. And as we can see here, it's much deeper. So that means it's much harder for the granite to actually be exposed. Now, this hole here is 24 metres deep. We've got 2 rows of 10 little lumps, and then we've got 4 lumps here, or four piles. So we've got 24 metres. And even at 24 metres, it still hasn't hit bedrock. But what we can tell from the hole is actually really interesting. Top of the hole, can't tell much, but here we're starting to see some real rusty colours coming through. And what do you think that might be? Well, it's as you guessed. It's rust. It's actually iron-rich rock. And that's not a bad thing. But when we start getting down here to these sort of mustardy yellow colours, we start seeing a quartz-rich rock. And one of the old prospecting sort of tales or signs is when you start seeing sort of these mustard colours in a riverbed or on a hillside, it's generally a good indication that quartz is shedding or breaking off at depth. And that's exactly what we've got here. The quartz itself is a little bit grey, which is a good thing, because that actually means that there's a bit of carbon in the rock. Now, gold itself is inert. It doesn't react with anything. It doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode. But the one thing that it will join up with, or join forces with, is carbon. So if you've got what they call smoky quartz, or real grey, dark quartz, then you've got a fair chance that there just might be a bit of gold in that. And that's what these guys probably would have been looking for. So even though John Holland smashed this track through over 100 years ago, there's still people out here still trying to make their fortune. So it's really interesting. Amazing what you can find.
on the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Going to places that I've never been. Seeing things that I may never see again. And I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Like a band of gypsies we go down the highway. Where the best of friends. Insisting that the world keep turning our way. And our way is on the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. Maybe someday making music with my friends. And I can't wait to get on the road again. And I can't wait to get on the road again. And I can't wait to get on the road again.
So I'm here a little bit further up the track. I'm here at a place called Sandalwood Rock. And obviously it's been given the name due to the tree, sandalwood. And there's a couple of them growing around the place here, but not a heap of them. But this granite outcrop that we see here is really, really fascinating. It's fascinating, and I know I keep saying it, because this is one of the key sites that the prospectors or people travelling up from Albany would have wanted to stop at. We can see here obviously there's little rock pools and sort of divots and deviations in the rock. Obviously when it rains, it obviously runs off and fills up these little divots and deviations, creating little rock pools. But what's really interesting is actually on the side of the actual rock outcrop itself, because obviously the water spills off the smooth granite surface and then it actually soaks into the soil that's there. By doing that, that actually enables the water to be stored for a longer period of time. It's been pretty dry out here probably the last month or two, and most of the grass that I can actually see resembles more that of chaff. But either way, you can still see sort of the effect and how it actually functions and works. What's really interesting about it too is that most of the tracks in this part of the world won't go in a straight line. They'll take whatever course they can to actually hit these little soaks and native wells along the way. And the reason being is most of the tracks out here, not all, but a large majority of them, were found back in the 1890s, 1900s. And obviously back then, you couldn't carry litres upon litres of water with you. So you really had to make sure that you were hitting a good water source every couple of days. Otherwise, you could die of thirst. And it's a real thing, it's happened many a times over the years, even in recent times. But there is actually a memorial north of Kalgoorlie, about 50 k's north, called Johnson's Rest. And that's actually where a prospector by the name of Johnson sadly passed away after a giant thunderstorm. And no, he didn't get struck by lightning, but he died of thirst, basically. So, they might be pretty to look at, but there's a much more important purpose as to why these are marked on the track. A little bit. But good morning, and welcome to day 3 on the Holland Track. And what a lovely day it is today. Bit cool last night, but that's nice. I prefer it to be a bit cooler. And we've got wonderful, vast blue skies today. And we set up camp in this lovely little grove of what I call stringy bark gum trees. And yeah, just nice to have a bit of shade and a bit of rustle of the leaves. But anyway, we're sort of getting towards the end of the trip, and we're sort of getting closer to our destination. I say sort of, because you never know if you're going to get there without, some temporary stopping from a certain individual that's here. But we're getting into the goldfields really now, and sort of it's a bit hard to explain, but sort of the eastern part of the Great Western Woodlands. And typically you start seeing a change, getting larger gum trees and obviously a change in the undergrowth too. So yeah, really nice. But I'm just sitting here, just got up for the day and just having a nice cup of tea of some Aussie blend, and it's going down pretty good. And obviously I'm enjoying it with the Series 2 here, and the Series 2's obviously got its cup of tea. What are you having today? Sometimes they can be a bit antisocial, but I believe it's having you weren't this antisocial yesterday, a 2050 Castrol mix. And I wanted to talk about this, if you don't mind, because I've learnt obviously how to carry my oil this way through a great deal of heartache. For many years I used to carry my oil in the actual plastic bottle that you buy it in, but I think it was on the canning, and Damon will remember this better than I do, but I had one that was carrying, I think, engine oil or gear oil, and the actual bottle chafed through and oil went all throughout the back of the Series 3. And I've had this happen a couple of times now, and after that I was just like, I've got to do something about this. So I went out and bought 2 5-litre jerry cans, metal jerry cans here, and they're fantastic. So I just decant my oil at home. I then know I've got 5 litres of oil, I've got a nice good rubber seal, I've got a safety pin to go through. I can put this on the side, or it can get rattled around in the back of the Series 2, and I know from experience that none of the oil is going to spill anywhere. So it's actually really, really good. So if you are looking at doing sort of longer trips in a Series Land Rover or an older vehicle that does require a little bit of love and attention or a cup of tea in the morning, have a look at the little 5-litre jerry cans. They're absolutely fantastic. And if you're doing longer trips, like for a month or so, I'd recommend getting a 10-litre one for your transmission oil. I'll check the transfer case today, but driving down to Hyden from Kalgoorlie, I think that was probably, it'd have to be close to 500 kilometres, so I'm not too sure what that is in miles, but it was a pretty warm day. I think it would have been close to 35 degrees, so maybe a bit over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or maybe 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I don't know, somewhere around that ballpark anyway. And when you sort of get up to that temperature, the transmission gets pretty hot, and as I've explained before in other videos, it actually starts pumping gear oil or oil from the transfer case into the gearbox. And even if you put a brand new seal in there, it'll still do it. Obviously not as bad as it would when the seal's completely had it, but you do need to check your transfer case regularly if you're travelling in hot climactic conditions. But anyway, I'm going to finish my cup of tea, and we'll get you a cup of tea into you, and we'll hit the trail and we'll go from there.